Welcome, everybody. This is the League of Women Voters Washtenaw Money and Politics Study Group meeting for Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. We are featuring Hank Mayers from Rise Up Michigan, who is going to be speaking on dark money and politics and local resolution solutions for transparency. We meet every Thursday at every first Thursday at 7 o'clock. And I am Robbie Duda, the lead for this group. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Hank.
Thanks, Robbie, as well as to the rest of you folks that are joining us this evening. We're talking about a topic that, as Robbie knows, is near and dear to my heart. Michiganders for Fair and Transparent Elections is the group that I'm president of. We've been involved in campaign finance issues and strategies and so forth since 2000, well, I guess the March or April of 2018, and we've come a long journey that I won't trouble you with, but we have been all about trying to figure out how to end the hijacking of our elections by big and dark money. And dark money, of course, being an even more significant problem. So we're going to talk about dark money. And as we talk about it, we're going to talk a little bit about what I like to refer to as political money laundering, which is what is a lot of the process around election money that makes it dark. And so at any rate, first of all, so what do you think dark money is? Well, it's all of us kind of think, well, this Bagman Bart here is probably a good representation of someone slinking around at night. Well, as you can well imagine, in the 21st century, we've got more sophisticated ways to do this, and it frequently uses a whole lot of moving electrons and all the rest of it. So at any rate, but fundamentally, dark money is money that we don't know where it came from. Okay, fundamentally, and there's lots of ways that people do this. And we're not going to talk about all of them tonight. We're going to talk about the ones that'll probably make your blood boil faster than some of the others, because there really is a remarkable, and it's become totally conventional. The thing I'm going to show you is not an exception, but it's kind of standard procedure. Now, so let's start with super PACs. Super PACs are organizations that have to report to the FEC, so they actually aren't dark in theory, and they have to report their donors and expenditures. Oh, by the way, let me do something here. Let me get this thing here to make it a little easier for you to see where I'm talking. At any rate, one of the things about super PACs, thanks to Citizens United and some other SCOTUS decisions, is they can accept any amount of money from almost anybody. They can't. The big check on that is they can't accept foreign money, and they can spend any amount of that money in our elections. The requirement is that they must be independent from a candidate. However, they're typically led by former campaign officials and people who know the candidate that they support real well. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but that, the misuse, abuse, and or completely independent, or the non-independence of these groups is an interesting subject for another day. So at any rate, so that's what a super PAC is. Okay. And by the way, notice the name here, Great Tomorrow USA PAC. It's going to be significant to keep track of that, because, and why is this thing not going forward? Excuse me a minute. Well, I make it do what I want it to do. There we go. Now, a more recent player, an organization, is a 501c4 nonprofit. Like our friends at the super PACs, they can accept money from anywhere, in large part because they don't have to report. So they literally can accept it anywhere. And yes, they can accept foreign money, even though it's strictly illegal. Now, they're only supposed to spend 50% of their money on elections because they are considered social welfare organizations. And they're their original purposes were to be advocate organizations of one thing or another. And if you belong to a natural resources group or a climate group, you belong to a 501c4 in all likelihood. So most of us get involved in these things one way or another, and they got started doing advocacy. Now, for a reason that I won't go into, the Supreme Court long time ago said that these guys don't have to disclose their donors, partly, and we can talk about that later if you'd like, but let's just leave it at that for now. So let's compare these two. The 501c4 is overseen by the IRS. The super PAC is overseen by the Federal Elections Commission. The 501c4 can accept money from anyone. The super PAC cannot accept foreign money. The 501c4 can be operated by anyone. There's no limitation. There really isn't. The independence requirement that's on super PACs does not apply to 501c4s. It generally will not report its donors. It reports a year or later, usually 4 months after the close of their fiscal year. The super PAC's got to report donors and expenditures regularly, usually quarterly. And the 501c4 is somewhere between 40 to 50% is the limit that they can spend on elections. Unfortunately, now these are ruled by the IRS, right? Unfortunately for us, the legislature, in their inevitable wisdom, as you can well imagine, underfunds the daylights out of auditing functions in the IRS, okay? And then both of them can spend unlimited. So there's some key differences here, but they're kind of the same kind of group. But the big difference is the 501c4s does not report donors or donations and so forth, and only provides very general reporting about what their expenditures are. The super PAC has to provide detailed reporting to the FEC. Okay, I don't know why this doesn't want to go forward, but okay. Now, so here we go. Now, remember I wanted you to remember the name of this group, right? Well, take a look at this. Look at how close the names are. I didn't just invent this. This kind of thing is real. It's just the names are a little different. This is the Action Organization, and this is the PAC Organization. They often call it Action because, as you saw, they can spend 40 to 50% of their money in the election arena. Now, the other interesting thing about this is at the bottom, the same organization frequently sets up both and may, in fact, share staff between those organizations, including contractors and the rest of it. Okay, so now, and as we remembered, this one with its window closed does not have to report, right? And mostly doesn't. And this one has to. And this one shows that John Smith gave him some money. Okay, now let's take a look at the wonderful laundering process that takes place, that takes dark money and makes another organization darker yet. So here's John Jones. He stands up for what he stands up for, and he has no problem giving money in his name to the Great Tomorrow USA PAC. He gave him $50,000 and they put his name on their roster. Okay. Now, got this guy named Bob Devious. He doesn't want anybody to know what he's doing. He donates $50,000 to this group, knowing that they won't report it, who he is. Now you think, okay, well, they're two separate groups. Well, not exactly, because the 501c4 can and does give money to super PACs. And this is how they basically launder and make it so that we have no idea that Bob Devious has given money to the super PAC, because the way they'll post it is they got the money from Great Tomorrow USA Action. These guys here, they didn't get it from Bob, but the money that they've got was from Bob, okay? Now, so what we got is Bob Debbie gave over 100,000. This is, it should be 50. I made a mistake here. To the super PAC without the voters having any idea that a person with his history and his interests is backing the messages that the super PAC was broadcasting during the election. And those messages could be a support statement or they could be an opposition ad. And the truth of the matter is, super PACs frequently do a great deal of oppo advertising. So the basic right of a voter to know who's backing who and what interests are behind a candidate, and just decide whether that candidate should get their vote or not. They don't know. They are voting blind. Their rights have been seriously impaired. Now let's talk a little bit about this page here. And I got to move this thing with our faces here so I don't get a little confused. Okay, now here's the 501c4, and here's the super PAC, and here's this new group for our presentation. But this is a political committee. This is the groups that, you know, citizens to elect Joe Smith for congressperson. That is the only area where money is in fact controlled because of concern. The historical justification has been to prevent outright corruption. Now, because of that, there is limits on what a person can give, and it requires strict reporting, which we point out right there. Now, when a person, a potential donor, okay, wants to give money, he is directed to one or more campaign money managers who say to him, well, okay, and let's say that this donor wants to give $100,000 to the candidate. So he tells the guy, I want to give him 100,000. Well, he says, well, first off, you can't give that directly to the candidate. You can give him $4,700, but that's it to the campaign. However, you can give the rest of the 100,000 to the super PAC, which is all for and behind us, and or you can give it to the 501c4, who will keep your donation anonymous. So the donor, speaking to the candidate or his representative, usually it's his representative, is telling them how to put their money in ways that darken it. So it's all of these vehicles are an everyday reality in campaign activity. Now, keep in mind, and just to be clear, super PACs and 501c4s can be independent and be, you know, about an issue that the candidate is interested in, okay, but that they don't have any tie or whatever, and the campaign doesn't refer them or whatever. There are those kinds. However, the big money is dealt with through these types of groups, okay? And, you know, in the background of all of this is our friend, the candidate. So, okay, now, and by the way, let me go back one thing here. The key thing to remember here is this group is used to basically take the identity out of the donor. And what has happened is at one time, 60% of super PAC money was individually identifiable. You could look at the reporting of the super PAC and know who gave it to them. That percentage has slipped to below 20% now, and it's going down even faster because more and more the 501cs are the front door to money to the super PACs, because people want, particularly when you, and by the way, this feeds the existing phenomena of a super PAC being a classic place where the nasty ads come from, and for people to fund that and can do it in a way where their name's not associated, it just escalates the availability of money to the super PAC and increases the belligerency of our elections, which sets into motion the rancorous nature that we see in our legislatures. It's a very big part of it. So, okay, so what do we say we want to do about this? All right. First of all, we need some legal provisions here to make this kind of nonsense basically illegal, and force transparency. At this point in time, we think we're going to end up having to do a ballot measure, and we're prepared for that. We've actually written most of it, but we also want to begin to pressure the legislature. But the particulars about the transparency is first that anyone who actually makes a public communication, if they communicate to the general public about the election, spend more than $1,000, and do this within 120 days before the primary through the general election. That's kind of what our election window is. And you talk about a very clear election topic or support for a candidate, you have what we call publicly communicated. And you have to report that. You have once you are in that league, you have to report donations and expenditures, and enhanced information about donors becomes a requirement of your actual publicity. You have to report your funders. The language of our material requires that lobbyists who are involved in election campaign services have to report their services that they render to the candidates and the funders that are involved. They frequently are bundlers of donations and other things that facilitate elections. And in some cases, their lobbyist services, including manage advertising campaigns. And this stuff is also non-reportable at the moment. The candidates and office holders in our piece will have to report their financial interests. So it's not just the money they are getting, but their personal resources. The executive branch appointees, the political people within the administration and so forth, also have to report financial interests. One of the things that's not on here is if your organization is member-based, like for instance, if you're a 501c5, that is, you are a chamber of commerce or whatever, those organizations are frequently member-based. And you will get our thing passed, you will have to report to your members your political expenditures and activity. It also will require anyone who's in a stockholder organization to do the same. So annual reports to stockholders would have to detail political expenditures. The other key thing in our transparency measure is teeth. If first, a violation is not a slap on the wrist and a misdemeanor, it's a felony. You will not only be responsible for having committed the action, but the executive of your organization that you are part of will be equally culpable. There will also be random audits, and there will be an administrative process where people who know that something's going on can report it and can precipitate audit activity. So the idea here is to really get it out in the open and get people to adhere to the law. Because at this point in time, in the absence at the federal level with auditors and the paucity of auditors at our own Bureau of Elections, people ignore the current stuff, just like it's not there. Now, the path forward here really is at the present time is to educate and motivate our constituency via the local resolution, and I'll talk about in just a second. And what we are hoping is that the resolutions get passed by local governments and various groups so that you have not just an individual speaking, but the community saying that they are concerned about this issue. And from the resolution, we expect to get some activity going within the legislature to talk about it. We do not expect any substantive language to really come out of the legislature, which is why we expect that we will actually pursue a transparency ballot measure that will either be, which will probably be a constitutional amendment so that the legislature can't take a very inadequate view of what we're trying to do here. Now, the The next one I want to talk about is kind of the background on the resolution, which we call our People Must Govern, Not Money resolution. We look on this now, and it is getting underway now. We've actually gotten one passed by the Ingham County Board of Commissioners here in the Lansing area. And the idea is to get advocates involved who are constituents of the group, whether it be a county, township, or whatever, to advocate for that entity, that organization, to pass one of these resolutions. And in so doing, we expect to increase the awareness of the issue itself and increase the focus and importance in the political circles about doing something about this. The resolution also touches on seeking a federal amendment to overturn the ill-advised SCOTUS decisions like Citizens United. One of the reasons why we are including that here is that the federal level, they are trying to deal with the crazy notion of money equals speech, that corporations have the same rights in elections as individuals. So the amendment at that level is to finally let us return to being able to put campaign contribution limits and so forth. The other aspect about the local resolution campaign is we are trying to involve other groups. We currently have recruited the new Michigan Common Cause chapter. They've helped find some folks for us in the Oakland area. We're trying to and there is an individual from Common Cause who are helping us approach the city of Pontiac. So we are doing this because we want Congress and our senators to know that we want them to deal with the big money problem, okay? And we want, the resolution also informs our state legislators that we want them to work on ending dark money in Michigan's elections. And as I said, we are prepared for disappointment in the halls of the legislature, and expect that we would probably be pursuing some kind of ballot measure in 24. Okay, again, the idea is to engage, motivate concerned citizens in taking practical action now to literally rise up Michigan, and to get local entities, whether they be political or community groups, like we've got a program we're developing to talk to civic groups like Rotary, to potentially pass a resolution or work with some other groups. And so basically what we've begun is a program where the people of Michigan are going to be able to articulate their demands, that the federal and state legislatures, if you will, do their part and deal with both the big money, that's really on the federal side, and dark money, which is mostly on our side. So, questions?
So I do have a question. The resolutions that you propose,
Mm-hmm.
do you have something, a template or something that you are wanting people to take to their local communities and format it so that it addresses the issue, but customizes it to their community?
Yeah, that is exactly what we put together. We have a model resolution, but we also have a packet of information, literally an activist guide that explains all of the issues with money and politics, and it allows them to pick and substitute what's in the model with things that might speak more strongly to their community, whatever that community is, and to adjust it that way. And there's also some helpful hints about how to approach their representative. One of the things that we're suggesting is people be aware of their status as a constituent to their representative on their township board, whatever, and to really play that card, because that's significant. And also talks a little bit about potentially engaging some other individuals, so that it's not just you if you don't want to do it by yourself. But yeah, we've got a whole, I refer to it as our little red wagon. We've got a full program that people can take advantage of and make good use of.
And are there any other questions? Harvey has a question. Go ahead.
I wanted to check on a couple of details. The C4, you said that a C4 can spend 40% of its donations on direct action. They can spend it directly on election issues.
Yep.
So when they transfer money to a super PAC, is that the 60% that they cannot spend themselves?
When they send, let's see, let me think. So if they give money to the super PAC, it has to be under the 50%. However, there's a heck of a lot of ignoring that right now because nobody's auditing.
If they don't ignore it, though, they can spend 40% directly and they can send 49% to a super PAC.
Right. Now, let me point something out. I've got a different slide program that shows how people actually can move the money. And one of the things they can do, let's call the election money 40 and the non-election money 60, just to make the conversation intelligent. Okay, so the 40% can go to super PACs. The 40% can be spent by them,
right,
doing their own ads. Now, the 60% can be given to another 501c4. Okay, now, when that money arrives at that 501c4, guess what? 40% of that money can be spent on election activity. So you have some really interesting daisy chains going on as this money, as people give away their 60% to other people that can spend it. And I haven't seen anybody really document, and I've got to talk to Simon Schuster and see if he'd be willing to do some research here. That's the Michigan Campaign Finance Network. But this is a known phenomenon. And in fact, there's some suspicion or some speculation that some of the numbers we have on election activity by, or if you will, total calculations of 501c money that gets into elections could potentially be inflated because it's money that keeps circulating until it gets down to this small amount. But yeah, they've figured that out. You'll see organizations in the political realm that have more than one 501c4. So they may even keep it in the family, moving it around. The games going on right now are like unbelievable.
Second question, your slide said that a super PAC cannot accept foreign money, but right, a C4 can accept money from anyone, including foreign money.
Yeah, because it's an advocacy group. They have a right to speak, and in theory they can do lots of speaking. Well, it's like, take a look at Fox News. What they say on the TV, what makes us crazy, is ain't legal. It is not illegal.
But my question is, yeah, has anyone actually tried to establish how much foreign money was given to 501c4s in 2016 or in 2020?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. By the way, one other example that I should mention, I've got a diagram for it. I won't go into it because I'll probably go through too much time. But there's a thing known as donor advised funds. Now, they are 501c3s. 501c3s cannot engage in election activity. They can educate and they can advocate, but they can't get in election activity. That's how they're different from 4s, okay? Now, the other difference between a 5 or 3 and a 4, as most of us know, is a 3, a donor to a 3 is potentially eligible for tax deductibility, okay? Now, watch how this game is played. It's incredible. Donors advised funds, if now remember, it's a 3. So the three could be all about, liberty and justice and free, unencumbered business, whatever. You can do all kinds of things as a three, as long as you stay in the education mode and some advocacy. And so Donors Trust is in fact a real organization that is intended to support very conservative causes. And it is a three. And what happens is wealthy people can give money to that three. And when they do that, they immediately get a tax deduction. Okay. And this is usually big money. So big money isn't satisfied just giving money to politics. They want to get a tax deduction for it. So they give it to Donors Trust. Now, having given the money to Donors Trust, they no longer control it. However, legally, they don't control it. However, many of these donor trust organizations allow you to tell them where you want to give it, but you have to designate and it's got to be another three, and I'll explain in a minute how this works. The organization they're going to give it to has to be on their list. So I can't just give it to them and say, give it to these guys over here. I have to take a look at the list that they've got and decide whether it is got the people I want, which I'll give them the money, because I can then tell them, give it to so-and-so. All right. At the timing that I want to do. Now, what happens is the groups that the Donors Trust give their money to is another 501c3, but it's a 501c3 that has written agreements with 501c4s to do political things, but not in an election. So for instance, what it typically will fund is that second 503 will either engage in advocacy, which will be very politically oriented, but it'll be advocacy, and it'll be not about election, it'll be not about an individual, but it'll be very much about a partisan theme. Okay, they can do that, or they can give that money. This is the second three now. They can use the agreement that they've got with the four that says you can only give to and that says you can't give it to a campaign. But when they give it to the four will use it for advocacy, advertising, and partisanship, and all that kind of stuff that's non-election. And so, and by the way, all the money is dark, right? The money that came out of the Donors Trust initially to the second 501c3 was a check that was written and said paid by Donors Trust. So it's totally dark. It is absolutely laundered, and the donors get to take a tax deduction.
Wow, that's even
Pretty
more
awful.
interesting.
That's
and
pretty awful. And by the way, another thing it does is when I give the money to this Donors Trust, when I have my demise, my money lives on, because the 501c3's got it. Now, how long they actually keep money and trickle it out as opposed to giving it out quickly after. I mean, the donor can demand that it be given away entirely, but it's got to go to the charities on the list. And by the way, I'll bet you my last nickel that if I go to Donors Trust with $500,000 and I say I want it to go to X place, they'll add it to their list, as sure as you're sitting here talking about it. Yeah.
Very interesting.
It's really bad out there. And one of the things that fortunately we finally learned how to crack the nut on the 501c4s in terms of getting them to report. And it's a result of some very recent Supreme Court decisions. What has to happen, and our thing is going to require this, I'm getting into more detail, but you guys are reasonably learned in this, so I thought I'd jump into this a little bit. And this was in the HR1 bill in Washington that didn't quite make it. What for a 501c to be required to report, what is necessary is the 501c to segment their election givers from the rest of their donors. And that requires a separate account. And as a state, we can require this. We can say to get into to spend money in an election in an election fashion, to be transparent, you have to, and our thing says after spending $1,000, you have to have a separate account, and any money you spend election comes out of there. Any donation that wants to do that goes in there. And by the way, any donation you take that goes into your election account, you have to have an acknowledgement from the donor that they understand that's what you've done with their money. So and then all of that has to be reported. And we know that will fly. Up until now, we've tried to get 501c3s, not we, but people have tried to get nonprofit groups, and it's 501c4, 5s and 6s, not the 3s, to get them to report but the Supreme Court has come back to a ruling in 55 that says that to protect people's rights to associate freely, they have a right of privacy in their donations to these social welfare groups. However, by making them create a separate account, it in no way impairs their ability to engage in the electoral process. We are not stifling any speech whatsoever. And what we have done then is we have made their election fund activity patently equal to what the super PACs are doing. And the 14th Amendment, which requires equal application of the law, seals it. And the what was it? The Americans for Freedom, or Americans for Progress, that's the Koch people, sued the state of California over a donor reporting for 501c3s. And it just recently was acted on by the Supreme Court. And while they told California, you can't do that, what they said, and it very clearly said that you can't treat them all the same because some of them have a right of privacy. You need to advise people you're going to spend that money in that way. And it basically set the stage of saying, you can do this. And so that's a relatively recent breakthrough. So I think we've got, and what's wonderful about that is it forces all of this moving money to be specifically recorded for election purposes. Plus, we can and will require that the true donors of the donation are specified. So when they acknowledge it, and this is one of the things we got to try out legally. If you can't designate real individuals or a corporation using its own money, if you can't indicate the top donors that go into the money that you have donated, because you're an organization, if you're a 501c4, no, excuse me, let's go. If you are another 501c4 and giving money to another 501c4, okay, which completely launders everybody, right? You don't know who it is. The recipient for can't accept the money if the donor will not identify the primary donors or the backers behind that money. And that gets kind of interesting in terms of this daisy chain of moving of money. But fundamentally, if everybody in the chain has to know the original donors, the information's got to flow. So frankly, what I'm hoping is that will reveal who in fact the donors are and reduce it. Yeah, Harvey.
The second C4
All right,
that gets the money from the first C4
right.
has to know who the donors are to the first C4. But does the second C4 have the obligation to make that public?
Yes, that
Oh,
would,
okay.
it would be required that they report it.
All right, you didn't say that. Just wanted to
Right.
double check.
Oh, no, that's fine. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
So with these resolutions, I know that a few cities or counties have submitted them and had them passed. Do you have an
Right.
example of one?
Yeah, I've got the Ingham County one, and I've also got the model. I can send you both.
Mhm. Okay. Are there any other questions? So let's see, I think in chat,
There's Harvey.
How much will a ballot measure in 2024 cost?
Oh, boy. Well, it depends how we get it done. I'm a firm believer that we have to do it by coalition. And on Monday, I have a substantive discussion with the VNP policy group working on campaign finance. And I've already got Michigan Common Cause engaged. I am hopeful that when we get to the point where a piece of legislation or a ballot measure has been formally written, our ballot measure piece has been formally written, but the Board of Canvassers haven't seen it. I am told by Susan Smith that when we get it to the Board of Canvassers, they can actually formally act on it, or if it's legislation. My notion is we go to the legislature, we say, we want you to prepare we want you to prepare a ballot measure for an amendment to Michigan's Constitution to do this. And they're going to go, you got to be kidding me. And no, I'm going to say I'm quite serious, because legally you can do that. And if you don't, we won't. If you won't, we will. And we will do that in 24.
and just to let everyone know, Sue Smith is the League of Women Voters from Michigan advocacy. Actually, I think she's the program director, but
Yeah, she's vice president for policy.
vice president for policy. Okay.
Right.
Thank
Right.
you.
So yeah, this is going to be a group thing. And obviously, if we can get VNP, we could massively reduce the signature circulation cost. If we didn't, if we had to do it on our own, it's about $3.5 to $4 million to do the circulation.
Well, we thank you very much. If there aren't any other questions, I just want to invite people to stay on, because we are going to be talking about a few things with our Money and Politics group.
Cool. All right.
But otherwise, Hank, thank you very much.
Thank you all for your attention. I've enjoyed the.
Oops, Harvey has one more question.
So since the Ingham County people passed this and they're in Lansing, has Ingham County gone directly to the legislature and discussed it, or just passed the resolution so far?
Well, what one piece of the way the process works is when it passes, we do a media event where the resolution is formally passed to the, and in that case, we had 3 reps, one state senator representative, and we had a representative from, I believe, Senator Stabenow. And we have not pursued getting the legislature to begin to talk about it, because we wanted to get a couple more areas, so it's more than just one delegation. But that's what we see happening with each of these things, is a formal transmittal, the media is invited, and hopefully the event, gets people realizing something's happening and I need to be part of it and so forth. At this point, my number one priority is finding constituents who are willing to approach local governmental or civic groups to get the resolution thing going. We've got one pending. I mentioned Pontiac earlier. We also have the Grosse Ile Dems are going to do something with the township in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good talking with you.
Thank you. Good night, Hank. And
Night,
I'll
night.
send you a link to our recording.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Good
And
night.
I'll send you the material I promised.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have about 10 more minutes. I just wanted to go share the meeting agenda a minute here and look, but a few more things are on our agenda. So last month we did, our speaker was also recorded. It's now on the League of Women Voters Washtenaw YouTube channel. I did put a link to it right here in our minutes. One of the things that we talked about last month was doing some letter to the editor camp about dark money and politics, and asking our candidates for office to write some, to investigate their ideas on campaign finance reform, and encouraging these letters to the editors to ask them and report on that. So I'm starting that up for Livingston. I have Livingston, Oakland, Washtenaw, and Lenawee counties. I'm looking for someone to help me find the names of newspapers and online newspapers in those counties. And later on, I'm going to send a letter out to you all to see if you can help with that. And then just looking at the plan for next month, we had down, I just put together some things here, but I'm wondering if we would want to invite, Harvey, you mentioned in the minutes.
You need to give me more of a hint.
I know, Donna
Sorry.
Levinsky.
Oh, yeah, because she's the minority leader and in our neighborhood.
Yes, and I was thinking of inviting her for April. She said she might be available then. So does that sound like a good idea?
I just suggested it not only because she is the minority leader, but she's ending her 6 years, and therefore she may be freer to speak
Yes.
than if
I
she were in the
think it
middle
would
of her 6 years.
Do you know what she's going to do after she gets done with her term?
No,
Okay.
I'm not sure how the redistricting of the state Senate districts has affected things and who's running for what. I haven't gotten that far.
I'll contact her and ask her if she'd like to come in and talk.
Good. I'm going to have to leave in a minute. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I thank you, everybody, for coming. And I'm glad that we're recording this so we can get, I've got several emails from people saying I can't attend tonight, but I'm looking forward to the recording. So that is promising to me.
Good presentation by Hank. Thank you for getting that.
Thank you. I learned a lot, actually. I learned more every time I listened to him. The group's still going. We're still meeting.
Yeah.
And
Okay, yeah, these are very informative. I realize how much more I need to learn. I mean, tonight he's loaded with information. The one thing the materials that he mentioned, are those easily accessible?
you're talking about the resolution template.
Well, no, I think it was more about what Michiganders for Fair
Fair and transparency, fair and transparent elections. But as far as what Hank has to share, whatever he has to share with us, I will actually throw into the minutes so that people can look at it. Well, thank you again for coming and have a good night.